The wind was the first thing that tried to kill her. Not the hunger, not the cold, the wind. It came screaming across the prairie in the middle of the night, tearing at the cabin walls like something alive. Inside, she was on her knees, one hand pressed against the splintered door, the other wrapped around a rusted iron poker. The lantern had gone out, the fire was dying, and someone, had been circling the cabin for the last hour. Then came the sound. 3 slow footsteps, right outside her window. She stopped breathing. Out there, in the endless black sea of grass, she was supposed to be alone. Her name was never meant to be remembered. No monument bears it, no town carries it. But in the winter of 1873, somewhere in the vast American prairie between Kansas and Nebraska, a woman survived 40 days completely alone, after something happened to the men who were supposed to protect her. And what happened to them was never fully explained. The prairie in winter doesn't just freeze the body, it erases people. By the time the first blizzard hit, the nearest neighbor was 12 miles away. The nearest town, almost 30. No telegraph, no patrols, no law. Just wind, wolves, and miles of nothing. She had arrived months earlier with her husband and his younger brother, chasing land promised by the Homestead Act. 160 acres. A future. Freedom. That's what they called it. Freedom. But freedom on the prairie meant isolation, and isolation can rot a person from the inside. The trouble started small. Her husband began riding out farther each day, checking fence lines that didn't exist yet. The brothers stayed behind more often, watching her in ways that made the silence feel heavier. Words became shorter, meals quieter. At night, the wind pressed against the cabin like it was listening. Then one morning, the brother didn't come back from checking traps. They found his horse before sunset, saddle still strapped on, rifle missing, no tracks leading away, just drag marks in the snow that disappeared into open prairie. Her husband said wolves, but wolves leave something behind, blood, bone, a sign. There was nothing. And 3 days later, her husband rode out alone to search farther west. He never returned. That was day 1. The prairie has a way of swallowing men, but it had no intention of swallowing her, at least not easily. The first week alone was survival by instinct. She rationed flour and dried beans, melted snow in iron pots, nailed blankets over cracks in the cabin walls. Each night, she barred the door and slept with the poker beside her. And each night, she heard something walking outside. Not wolves. Too slow. Too deliberate. 3 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. Every night. She told herself it was wind shifting debris, wood contracting in the cold. But wind doesn't stop outside a window. Wind doesn't breathe. On the 8th night, she saw it. A silhouette against the moonlight. Tall. Still. Watching. When she rushed outside with the lantern, there were no footprints, only her own. By the 2nd week, hunger sharpened her senses. She began setting her own traps, hands raw from cold steel. She shot a prairie hen with her husband's spare rifle, the recoil bruising her shoulder purple. She forced herself not to cry. Crying wastes water. That's what her husband used to say. Water became its own enemy. Snowstorms came harder now, sealing the door with drifts taller than her waist. Twice she nearly suffocated digging herself out. But something else changed during that 2nd week. The footsteps stalked. No more circling, no more watching. The silence should have been relief. Instead, it felt like waiting. For what? She didn't know. Not yet. On day 15, she found the first sign that she might not have been alone after all. It was a piece of cloth caught on the outer fence post. Not hers, not her husband's. Not the brothers'. Dark wool, torn, and frozen stiff. Someone had been close enough to touch the cabin. Someone had been there while she slept. Why hadn't they come inside? Why only watch? That question would haunt her more than hunger ever could. By the third week, the prairie turned cruel. A storm rolled in that locals would later call a white death. Winds over 50 miles an hour, visibility 0, temperatures dropping so fast exposed skin froze in minutes. Inside the cabin, the roof began to lift. She held it down with her body. Imagine that. One woman pressing against a collapsing roof while the American frontier tried to tear her into the sky. She thought about leaving, walking east, but east was 30 miles of flat nothing. No trees, no rivers, no markers. Just white. People don't survive that walk. Not in winter. So she stayed, and that decision may have saved her life, or sealed someone else's fate. On day 22, she found blood. Not fresh, but not old enough to belong to the brother. Behind the cabin, half buried in snow, a dark patch soaked into frozen earth. She dug with bare hands until her fingers bled. Nothing underneath. No body, no clothing, just blood. Too much blood for a rabbit. Too much for coincidence. If her husband had come back, if he had been injured, why hadn't he come to the door? Unless he couldn't. Unless someone else had been there first. By now, sleep had become dangerous. She began dreaming of figures standing at the edge of the prairie, not moving, just waiting. When she woke, she sometimes found the door latch slightly shifted. Once she found ashes in a stove she hadn't lit. And on day 31, she found footprints, clear, human, leading toward the cabin, but none leading away. They stopped at her door. She opened it slowly. Nothing outside, just horizon and wind. So where did the person go? That question was never answered. The final week was the hardest. Food was nearly gone. Beans stretched thin. Flour reduced to dust. She boiled leather straps for broth, chewed bark, melted snow until her lips cracked and bled. Her body grew smaller, her mind sharper. She began to suspect something she hadn't dared consider before. What if the threat wasn't outside? What if whatever happened to the men had happened inside first? What if she had missed something? An argument, a secret, a betrayal. The prairie doesn't create violence, it reveals it. On day 39, she heard the footsteps again. 3 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Closer than ever. She didn't wait. She opened the door and fired into the dark. The rifle shot shattered the night. The echo rolled across miles of empty land. Silence followed. No scream. No fall. Just silence. The next morning, she found blood in the snow. Fresh. A trail leading west. She followed it for half a mile before it vanished in drifting wind. Body. No weapon. Nothing. On day 40, riders finally appeared on the horizon. Neighbors. They had come after noticing smoke missing from her chimney for weeks. They expected to find a body. Instead, they found her standing upright, thinner but unbroken, rifle in hand, alive. The cabin showed no signs of forced entry. No second footprints remained. No evidence of intruders. The blood behind the cabin? Explained as animal. The cloth scrap, probably blown from a wagon passing miles away. The footsteps? Wind patterns. That's what the men said. That's what they wrote down. But one detail never made it into official records. When they rode west, searching for her husband, they found something strange. A shallow grave. Disturbed recently. Empty. And nearby, a rifle. Not her husband's. and not the brothers either. No one ever claimed it. No one ever identified it. And the prairie kept its silence. She lived another 30 years, never remarried, never spoke publicly about the 40 days. When asked what happened, she would say only this: "It watches." Was she stalked? Did a stranger kill the men and wait for her to weaken? Did someone try to claim the land by force? Or did isolation fracture something deeper inside that lonely cabin? We don't know. But for 40 days in the winter of 1873, one woman stood alone against hunger, cold, and something that may or may not have been human. And if you ever find yourself driving through the endless flatlands of the American Midwest, and you see nothing but grass touching the horizon, ask yourself, how many stories did the prairie bury, and how many are still walking out there in the dark, listening, waiting,